In today's episode, we're going to talk about how you can help with the COVID-19 research going on at Ancestry.com. Coming up is an interview with Dr. Eurie Hong. She is a leading scientist over there at AncestryDNA. We're going to get into that interview here in just a moment, but first, let me introduce myself. My name is Connie Knox. I am a lifelong genealogist here to help you go further, faster, and factually with your family research. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified each time I upload a video. There is a newsletter, a Facebook page, and a website. Make sure you're hooked up with all those. Links for all of that are in the show notes below. All right, let's get into this interview with Dr. Eurie Hong coming up next. Dr. Hong, thank you so much for joining us today. You are here to help us understand this survey that we're getting in our email about the COVID-19 situation. Can you kind of explain why Ancestry is doing this?
Yeah, well, first, Connie, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be here talking to, our Ancestry family about the COVID-19 survey. And so, we're doing this survey to be able to help combat the COVID-19 disease that's happening. And so Ancestry is uniquely positioned to be able to provide the opportunity to help because the products that we have, the DNA origins, the DNA story product, the ethnicity estimates and matching, that is work that we do that takes a look at your DNA in order to find patterns in that tell you about your family history. And so we have a team of scientists whose expertise is understanding how you can take a look at your DNA in order to tell you information about you.
Okay, I know there's like 16 million records out there, I think, DNA.
Yeah.
So you definitely have probably the largest data set out there. And so tell the audience a little bit about what you're hoping to glean from this information.
Mm-hmm. And so there's what we want to be able to do is ask our Ancestry customers to help participate in this study in order to help better understand how your genetics, what your DNA, how it contributes to how people are either resistant to the disease or responding to the disease. And so this is a global outbreak and affects all of us. Mm-hmm. And so what we want to be able to do is, invite our customers to fill out the survey. And the survey asks questions about, whether or not you may have been exposed to COVID, whether or not you've had COVID and recovered, the types of symptoms that you've had, how many people you've been around. And so what we are going to do with that information is take those answers and take a look at, are there groups of people who may have been exposed and not developed a severe disease? How does their genetics look compared to people who may have a more severe disease, or people who we need a group of people who haven't been exposed so that we can then compare the genetics to say, are there any differences in the different groups of people? And so, this is just really an invitation for our Ancestry customers to help participate. And as you mentioned, we have more than 16 million customers who are part of our DNA network, and to leverage that information and that engagement in order to help combat the disease.
So how's the response been?
It's been overwhelming. I am so honored and humbled. The email started going out 2 weeks ago, and in that 2-week period, we have over 250,000 people fill out the survey.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is to help the audience that's watching have an understanding if they're kind of on the fence as to whether, they want to participate in this study or not, so we're just trying to get a sense of how it works and how you're making that data available. So one of the questions I had was, so you're making this available to any research company that is working on the COVID-19 situation?
We will make this, your privacy is very important to us,
Right.
And so, our invitation for you to participate requires you to be, a U.S. customer,
Okay.
over 18 years old. You have to agree to research our research consent form, and so everyone has the option to opt in to our research protocol, and then you also then have to agree to take the survey. So we have a landing page that describes the study, and then you opt in to participate in the study. And so you're consenting and choosing voluntarily to take the survey questions. And so once you fill out the survey, fill out questions about your exposure, your level of, if you've been exposed, if you think you've been exposed, if you've been diagnosed, and the range of symptoms, we'll identify the groups of people based on those survey answers, and then de-identify them. So we'll remove your name, we'll remove, where you live, email address, any personalized identification. And then we will make this data available to qualified researchers who are working on, therapeutics or vaccines for combating COVID. And that process will involve an application from the researchers and a review by an internal ancestry committee that ensures that they're respectable researchers and that they will adhere by the privacy and security standards we set.
Well, let me ask you this. If you have not been exposed to COVID, do we still want to take the survey?
Yes, absolutely. What we also want to understand is what are the characteristics of people when we're doing the analysis. So when we're trying to understand, what are the patterns in your DNA that may have a genetic contribution to your response to COVID. We want to also have a group of individuals who may not have been exposed to COVID in order to do that comparison as well. And so we have more than 250,000 people respond, but we still need hundreds and thousands of more customers to be able to do that analysis.
It's funny because I was filling out one of these surveys the other day and it said, have you been sick? And it dawned on me, well, wait a minute. Coming home from Roots Tech on March 1st, I came home with a cold. Mm-hmm. And the timing was perfect as far as the COVID thing. I never really got nothing but mild symptoms and, sore throat kind of thing. But I got to thinking, what do you do with that kind of data if a person doesn't know that, yes, they were sick, but they don't know if they were exposed to COVID or not?
Yes, and so we have those questions as well, because a lot of people won't know if they were exposed, and they maybe had similar symptoms. What we want to also, those types of questions are included as well around, exactly. I know several people, in the March timeframe, who are like, I kind of had symptoms, but I don't know if they were, but I can answer some of those questions, and that will help us as well. I'm glad you addressed the privacy issue because I know that a lot of people are shy about even just taking a DNA test because they're worried about privacy issues. And so one of the questions I was thinking was, okay, so if we're consenting to this study,
Are we also consenting to other studies? Because I know, if I recall, back when I originally took the DNA test, I think I opted in for studies.
For research studies.
So if a person's opting into the COVID study, are they opting into the other studies that Ancestry has as well?
And so when you opt into the COVID study, your answers for the COVID study will be the only answers used for research for data that will be shared with other researchers. So it's the answers to the surveys and the genetic information that will be shared with researchers for doing research on COVID.
Perfect. Okay, so I understand that you guys are making this data available to other companies. Have any of the research companies jumped in and said, yes, please?
We, at this point in time, since we're collecting the information right now, I think we're at the early stages. Our current plan is to make the data available through a data repository. It's called it's EGA. It stands for the European Phenome Archive. And what that allows us to do is identify that data set and have it in a secure location where qualified researchers can then apply there for access. And so the applications, they'll do a primary screen, and then we'll get information from qualified researchers who are reputable and meet the security standards and privacy standards that we've set out.
So have there been vaccines or treatments from other studies similar to this one that you guys have been able to benefit from?
So our unique, our unique talents or our unique expertise is really taking a look at the genetics and interpreting the genetics, and what are the places in your DNA that tell you about where your ancestors lived in the ethnicity estimate, or the communities that you're getting, and then also what patterns in the DNA mean for your traits and your health, and so that's where we feel Ancestry's expertise can contribute to combat COVID-19. And so as other examples there are examples where people have found these genetic patterns in individuals' DNA that can help treat heart disease and cholesterol levels. There's a lot of drugs out there based on the genetic signatures people have found to help lower cholesterol levels. And so this is what we're doing, trying to identify the genetic patterns and help scientists accelerate the pace of research so our scientists can find genetic patterns so companies can make vaccines or other therapeutics to really combat this global pandemic.
So anybody who has taken a DNA test, sometimes we call them DNA tourists, people that come in and just want to see what their ethnicity estimates are, and then they go away. But maybe they're watching this, and so just anybody who's taken this Ancestry DNA test is eligible for this, yes?
Yes. Someone you already are an Ancestry customer, you're in the US, you're over 18, you opt into the research consent, and then you choose to take the COVID survey. And so what you do now is you can go to the Ancestry, log into your Ancestry account, and on the toolbar, go to the Personal Discoveries Project. And so Personal Discoveries Project is our survey mechanism. And that's where we have put out surveys about your physical traits, and that's really feeds into the traits product. We have some questions about your health that'll feed into the health product. We have questions there about your family history, about where your grandparents were born. That feeds into our ethnicity, and our DNA story products. And so there's a section there on the COVID study that you can click into, and then it'll check to make sure that you have opted into research.
Fabulous. Because the next question I was going to ask, is there a link that we can just click on and go straight there?
And that's how you navigate onto the resource. And if you got the email, the link will be in the email as well.
When do you think the results from this study will be available?
So we're starting to look at the data. I mean, because of the, just the overwhelming response, we're starting to take a look at the data to see what we can find. With 250,000 responses, there'll be, a percentage of people, a small percentage of people there who have recovered at this point from, being infected with COVID, having COVID. And so we're starting to look, and then, the course of the survey will go on for the next couple of months. So we can, get a couple 100,000 more respondents in order to figure out what genetic patterns are there.
So just to be clear, because I like to be clear, you guys are really just collecting the data, removing the identifiers from it. So people's personal information, their name and such is removed. But are you guys doing any of the studying yourself, or are you just making this data available to other scientists? We
are doing the studies as well. We have to make sure that the information, is scientifically, is going to support scientific research. And so we will do studies ourselves, contribute that knowledge back as well. And so,
Super.
Our plan is to take a look at the answers, do some preliminary studies, and then, work with other scientists in order to help contribute this knowledge back.
So what's your gut instinct? Are you seeing anything yet?
We haven't looked at our data quite yet. We're just starting to.
Okay.
But I'm super excited that share something back out to our customers.
Well, I really hope that, we really can learn something from this. Wouldn't it be awesome to be able to create some identifiers that can then create some solutions, I have one more question. It's off topic, but I have to ask because this is killing me to ask every DNA person out there that I talk to. Beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, and we pray for all of those who are afflicted by this. But beyond that, looking at DNA research down the road for our family history research, what cool stuff do you see on the horizon that we'll be able to use that DNA? Are we going to be able to recreate the features of our ancestors by combining, clusters of cousins? I don't know. I'm asking.
I think one of the really interesting things that we're working on is trying to get more accuracy or precision around which side of the family your heritage where sort of your heritage came from. We hear this a lot, but like, my German side came from my mom, can you tell me this? And those are types of research that we're starting to do.
I know a lot of people like to take all of their siblings and do the chromosome browsing, chromosome painting kind of stuff and try and recreate the DNA of their grandparents and such. And I know a lot of the questions that are asked in the health studies and stuff are about your earlobes and about, all these physical features. So I kind of think that someday we might be able to get a sense at least of hair color, eye color, maybe some physical features of our great grandparents, maybe.
Yeah. And I think to that point, those questions help us figure out places in your DNA that contribute to it. So there are some times where it's really, like if you think of your DNA as a book, and you have a 1,000-page book, sometimes it's just one typo that makes a difference between, your hair color. Other times you need 100 typos or 1,000 typos, or, different ways of spelling and, tens of thousands of places in your DNA in order to contribute to that characteristic. And that's what we're trying to understand.
I like that analogy. I've heard that analogy before. And I think you're referring to the DNA code, right? I'm not a genetic person.
Yeah. No, the DNA code, it's really, or a cookbook. I like to talk about the DNA in your cells as a cookbook. And we're really trying to interpret different parts of the cookbook and what that can tell you about you and your family history.
I hope that the audience, if they were on the fence about, participating in the survey, hopefully we answered your questions, and I know that I'm going to be jumping on here in just a moment and answer the survey myself. Is there anything else that you would like the Ancestry community to know?
I just want to say thank you. I've just been I've been with Ancestry for almost 5 years. And every time, I'm just humbled and awed just by the enthusiasm and commitment of the Ancestry community and just the connections we're building. The Ancestry community is building those connections with each other and then also with us, and just the outpouring of participation and wanting to help understand why some people are getting really sick. What are things that protect us, and how can we help really accelerate finding a therapeutic, a treatment, or a vaccine for this. And I guess one other thing, a lot of the questions that we covered, they're on an FAQ on the website as well.
Oh, fantastic. I will see if I can find that and provide a link in the description below the video.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So people can go check that out before they actually go and dig through the survey. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this very much.
As promised, I will leave links for all of that information in the show notes about the questions that they're asking in the survey, as well as instructions on how to get to the survey. That'll be in the show notes below the video on the YouTube channel, as well as in the newsletter and at genealogytv.org, just so you can find it everywhere. All right, so there are videos on the screen for you now that may be of interest to you. It is time for you to go find your ancestors. So until next time, keep on climbing your family tree.